Welcome everyone to the Adventure with Purpose podcast, the show where we talk about real people's stories who are doing meaningful and incredible things in the outdoors. It's our first episode and we're really pleased to have Brandt Ryder with us here, a local Fort Collins astrophotographer, landscape photographer, and conservation scientist. But I don't want to speak for you, Brandt. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today and chat with you guys about, my life, my purpose and the things that, I do on a day-to-day basis. So.
Yeah. Well, it's great to talk with you because I feel like you, both inside and outside of the office, kind of embody everything that we at Tellus here do, and also what the show is all about. We're going to be talking a little bit about science, a little bit or a lot of it, kind of depends on how much you and I want to talk about photography.
Yep.
And how all that translates to being outdoors, having a love for it, but also making sure that we have a purpose when we go out there too. So for those of you who don't already know and love you, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so as you said, my name is Brandt Ryder. I've lived here in Fort Collins for about 7 years. A lot of my day job is overseeing the strategic direction of our science and stewardship programs. So, it has some glamour, but it's not a fully glamorous thing. I live here with my wife and daughter, 9-year-old daughter, awesome. And 2 dogs. And by night and weekend, I obviously spend a lot of time out there chasing light, whether they're small pinpoints of light up in the sky, stars, or sunrises and sunsets. And I do that, not just here in Colorado, but all over the Intermountain West. So, we live in this amazing place. So a lot of opportunity to do that landscape photography.
Yeah, we're fortunate to live in an area with such incredible access to nature. I talked to some other photographers and they only get to do it on vacation. Yep. And when we think about everything that's just in our backyard, it's incredible. Yep. So that's where you are now.
Yeah.
Where did your love for the outdoors start?
Yeah. Kind of an interesting story. My grandfather was a dairy farmer, and he owned a large parcel of land, ran cows on that land, and produced milk. And he was kind of the first conservationist that I ever knew. He felt very, very passionate about the land and about caring for his land. He always had a huge vegetable garden, so he always had his hands out there in the dirt. He was also an avid hunter, and so he did a lot of deer hunting, a lot of duck hunting on his property, and he had such a love for the outdoors that he put conservation easements on his property. So he was kind of the first person that I ever knew. He wouldn't have called himself a conservationist, but he embodied that conservation spirit and that love for the land and that stewardship for the land. And he actually took me out a lot as a small kid in Western Massachusetts, and he would take us out bird watching. He would take us out just out there, looking for frogs, out in the garden digging stuff up. He'd let us drive the tractor around. It was all of those kind of childhood memories that got me excited and interested about spending time in the outdoors. And like many people who have a childhood love of something, they think that will be their career. Yeah. And the path that I took towards it was originally wanting to do marine biology, and then because of one circumstance or another that didn't work out, ended up having to go to a secondary college not of my primary choice, and then studied wildlife biology and kind of rekindled that love for birds when I got into college, and so that's where it all started, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, being with your relatives out there, doing some bird watching, was that really kind of the seed of your interest in birds and conservation in that regard?
It was. So I would say it started with my grandfather. He taught us how to bird by ear. He taught us how to find birds. And then when I was in college, everybody that studies biology or wildlife biology wants to study what we think of as charismatic megafauna. So they want to study big things. They want to study the lions. They want to study the wolves. And so in order to find a niche, you kind of have to diversify what you might be interested in. And I happen to have an opportunity to have taken an ornithology class with a really, really influential professor who ended up becoming a mentor. And then I got re-engaged with birds and had, a spark bird moment, as many bird watchers do, and fell back in love with birds at that point in time in my life.
That's cool. You were mentioning you're able to bird by ear. I have is it the Merlin app
Yes.
on my phone? If I didn't have that, or if I don't have signal for that, I'm helpless. It's like
Sure.
Actually, my wife and I were just at the it was at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science,
Yep.
and I finally found out what that one bird was. It's a black-billed. Oh goodness, it has a long blue tail.
Oh, a magpie.
That's it.
Yeah.
A black-billed magpie, and I've been calling it like a bluebird or something for 2 years. So I'm glad you're here to talk to us about bird conservation. And
Of course.
Okay, so that is kind of like your moment of impetus with love for nature. It drives you towards the scientific angle, and you've spent your career in conservation science.
Yep.
Where does the creative element factor in? When does photography enter the picture? Because it's pretty recent, I think.
Yeah, it is. So I went through an arc of my career where I spent a lot of time in kind of academic-oriented science, writing scientific papers, analyzing data, collecting data, formulating scientific questions, and that is all obviously very much the logical side of things and analytical side of things. And in 2018, I found myself being a little bit frustrated with that. My whole family has kind of creative things that they've engaged in historically, whether it's, singing or arts or whatever it is. So I knew I had some creative spirit, and as a child, I liked to draw a lot. So I think it was about 2018, mid 2018, maybe early 2019. I was like, all right, I need to do something. I need to get myself out of this funk, do something different. Find something that's going to kind of push me out of my comfort zone, and photography seemed like a safe bet because at face value it is very, very formulaic. I mean, you understand certain settings. The exposure triangle is scientific, and so when you go out there and you pick up a camera, the process of using a camera is like the scientific process. It is repeatable when you know the variables. Yeah. What I didn't recognize when I got engaged with that was that there was this whole under layer of photography that I maybe didn't embrace at first, and that was creative composition, and then that you can't just take a photo and expect that photo is going to tell this incredible visual story. You hear people say, I'm sure people have said this to you, wow, your camera takes great photos. It's not the camera that takes great photos. It is the composition. It is the post-processing. It is all the other things that go in. And all of those things open up this kind of creative world that maybe you don't initially appreciate when you get engaged with photography. So yeah, there's been an evolution for me in that sense, that it started very scientific and safe, and then it has very much evolved through time.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, photography for you is kind of like that perfect artistic outlet because it brings together almost like both sides of the brain.
Yep.
And like you said, I mean, you could be the most technically proficient person in running a camera.
Yep.
And go out there and take, I'll say uninspired, I won't say bad, uninspired pictures.
Yep.
So yeah, there's so much to it that it transcends that, okay, I know the focal length and I know this and I know that I should be, setting this on the interval to capture that. Or, so that's nice that you're able to see that. And you're so right about people who are like, oh, it's the camera. Mm-hmm. I know we're about to talk about your amazing backpacking trip. I recently was on a backpacking trip, and I had gone to a chiropractor before and told him, I'm going with this purpose in mind. I'm going to shoot the Milky Way over Lone Eagle Peak.
Yep.
And he says, yeah, let me see that picture when you come back. So I did. And he says, wow, isn't it amazing what phones will do this day?
Like, well.
And I didn't have it in me. I was like, yeah, it is. I just agreed with him. I was like, hey, if he thinks it's a great photo from a phone, that's fine. But yeah, there's so much more to it. There's obviously the artistic aspect to it. Well, one further question about that. You're a scientist. Mm-hmm. You're an artist. you're pursuing these adventures to kind of scratch both itches, so to speak.
Yep.
How is that term adventure? It's a word we throw around a lot. What does that mean to you now? Like when you set off on an adventure, what's at the core of that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, somebody asked me recently, when do you feel the most like yourself? And there are 2 times in my life. One is when I am like an unbridled kid with my 9-year-old daughter, laughing hysterically. Or the other time is when I'm completely out of my comfort zone, doing something that scares me to death. That could be getting up and hiking like up over 12,000 feet, 13,000 feet here in Colorado in the dark mostly, and doing it alone. Or it could be standing under the stars and just feeling kind of dwarfed and having a real true sense of my scale within the grand universe. And so that is what drives a lot of my adventure with purpose, is that those are the things that fill me up as a person, that make me feel whole, that make me feel like myself, that make me feel, like I can face the tough adversity that we may face on a day-to-day basis in our jobs or in our lives or wherever that is. And those are, I think we can spend our lives focused on acquiring things, but those aren't the things that we're going to remember when we look back. I think we're going to remember those experiences, and I think that is the true purpose of like getting out there, is to experience something that maybe nobody else has, and potentially capture something that nobody else has.
And like you said, you're so much better, so much richer for it as a person than if you hadn't have done that. It's like when you get outside of your comfort zone, that's the adventure zone, and that's really when you grow as a person.
Yep.
And then beyond that's the twilight zone. We won't get into that's another podcast. But so let's talk about your recent trip.
Sure.
If I'm not mistaken, you just got back from a 6-day, 100-mile expedition through the Canadian Rockies.
That's right.
Bring me in on this. Why this trip? Why this trail?
Sure.
And if you wouldn't mind too, before we started rolling, you were saying this was kind of like a Goldilocks trip, being able to do it in the circuit that you were able to do it. Just tell us all about that.
Yeah, so I have a handful of people who I've done photography with over the years. I try to find people who I think are going to push me, and that I'm going to push them. This particular friend of mine and I had gone to Patagonia together and been able to experience some of that. And so he was planning this trip to the Canadian Rockies, and I had spent quite a number of years photographing aspens here in Colorado. And one of the things for me about photography is trying to find something new, to shoot something different, or to shoot a different perspective on something that's well known. Yeah. And so the Canadian Rockies really represented that. I had been up there in the winter. I had seen some of these incredibly, jagged peaks, similar to the San Juans here in Colorado, but not had really much opportunity to fully explore them or shoot them. And so he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I'm thinking about planning this trip. It's going to take a lot of kind of planning in terms of getting all these permits lined up. And I want to go and I want to hit sequentially all these iconic spots. It's Lake O'Hara, it's the area around Lake Louise, it's Flow Lake, it's Assiniboine National Provincial Park. So, all of these different places that have something subtly unique to offer. But of course, you have to hike in to get to all of them. And you have to get the permits because it's permitted to camp at these places. And so I'm going to give him all the credit, spending all the time, the legwork, and the planning to help get these permits all lined up. But we got them sequentially lined up over the course of 6 days. And like I said, like you said, it was Goldilocks in many ways. So, yeah.
It's always nice to have that friend who helps planning the logistics stuff, because sometimes you end up being that guy in your friend group,
Yep.
which is great, but it's nice to have someone who's like, don't worry, I got it all. Just show up with your camera and your gear and go. It's like, all right, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
And I'm not a planner. I mean, my wife will tell you that through and through. And so I struggle with that part of life, is being planned and having things worked out. But yeah, it worked out this time. So
Nice. Okay, so you've connected with your friend. He's taken the lead on planning it. Do you have a goal in mind for this trip? Whether that's artistic or personal or just proving to yourself you can do it, whatever it is.
yeah, so a lot of the photography that I have done in the backcountry are, kind of in and out types of trips, or very short trips. And so I had done a lot of backpacking earlier in life, but I hadn't done a lot where I have to carry all of the camera gear. And so my goal in many ways was to capture something unique. And the larches and the color in Canada is extremely short-lived. And so I knew we had this very, very small window of time. And of course, because you have to get the permits so far in advance, you have no clue if you're going to even be close to that window. You could show up and all the needles will be gone off the trees, or you could show up and all the needles will be green, or you can show up and get very, very lucky and everything will be perfect. And of course, from a photography standpoint, maybe you show up and all the needles are yellow, but it's bluebird skies the whole time. And you don't get any good light, and you don't get any clouds, and or it's super windy and you don't get any reflections. And we had it all. We had perfect skies, lots of clouds. We had good sunrises and sunsets almost every day. We had calm water on most of these lakes, which are turquoise blue and brilliant. I mean, you can't even really edit the water because you turn the saturation up and it's overloaded.
I've taken images like that where you're actually turning sliders down. And you're like, no one's gonna believe that this is what I saw. And having seen just a handful of your images, it's you definitely got it all, man. Those conditions were amazing.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, this is about as jealous as I've been in my life. You wrote a blog for us as well, and in that you talk about this kind of like magical moment. You're waking up at like 2:45 in the morning. Take me into that. I've been there on my own trips, but it's pitch black, it's cold. You're not wanting to get out of your sleeping bag. What's driving you out of your tent at 2:45?
Yeah, I mean, motivation can be a really, really hard thing. But like one of the things, I'm turning 50 this year, and one of the things that has been this huge motivating factor for me is, as I said, challenging myself physically and mentally, and I've been doing that consistently in my day-to-day life. So that means getting up on a routine, like working out 7 days a week, probably pushing myself a little bit too hard in some instances. But then when I get myself out into, camping, doing photography shoots, I just remind myself that I can do this. I can do hard things. My daughter's teacher has this big sign on the wall. We can do hard things, and she's become my favorite teacher my daughter's ever had for that reason. And so, it's never going to be easy to pull yourself out of bed, especially when you haven't gotten a lot of sleep. You hiked 17 miles the day before. But if there is this small chance that you're going to get something incredible, whether you actually get it in camera or don't get it in camera, but you just experience it, there's something so fulfilling about that and the opportunity to capture something like that. And then to be able to use that to kind of inspire other people. And I think, we talked a little bit about what drives my interest in photography and how I got engaged in it. And that's something that I never would have kind of recognized, that people find great joy in visual stories, and it's very fulfilling for them. And the interaction that you might have with them through them being like, wow, this is an incredible photo, and how did you catch it? And tell me about, the hike here or whatever it is. So that's all very motivating in many ways. So
yeah, that's great. There's nothing like showing an image to someone who wasn't on the trip. Mm-hmm. which even going on a trip like this isn't without sacrifices, right? You're a family man, 9-year-old, like it takes something
Yep.
to go on one of these trips. So when you can come back, not just with good memories, but something almost tangible, right? An image, here you go, to then maybe inspire your daughter or a family member or someone at work, whatever it may be. It just, it takes it to like 11. It makes the experience, incredible.
Yeah, and I think, dovetailing it with my passion for the outdoors and conservation, if we can use that imagery to teach people about how amazing our planet is, and that these places will not exist unless we have stewards, unless we have champions for these wild outdoor places, they will go away. And so, I think there is this kind of synergy between being a scientist and a conservationist and being able to take images of the outdoor that inspire people. And, a lot of the night sky images are that for lots of people. There are, probably 70-80% of the general public has never seen the Milky Way, and they don't recognize the amazing beauty of our galaxy. And so to be able to capture that with a camera and then show that to somebody and tell them that they too have this opportunity to see that, but there are things we have to do. We have to protect dark skies. We have to do those types of things. So, I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think you must be reading my notes. I had a question similar to that about, like, how does your conservation work through photography differ from that you're doing, scientifically? And I think you answered that nicely in terms of we have to inspire people so that they care about these things that we need to be protecting.
Yep.
And it's an unfortunate thing, but I think for many people, maybe even some that live in beautiful places like Colorado, the idea of nature and wildlife and that these could be ephemeral things. It's a foreign concept to them, or their interactions with nature aren't quite as deep in terms for them to know what they could be missing out on.
Right.
For instance, they'll go to the beach and they're like, the ocean's incredible, but that's kind of the edge of the interaction. They don't know, there's floating islands of plastic out there that we need to take care of, and there's coral bleaching. And so similarly, like, the Canadian Rockies are incredible. We need to protect these larches because if there's wildfires that continue every single year, they may not be around for us. So showing people this is what's at stake almost is an amazing thing. So thank you for doing that for us.
Of course. Yeah, happy to do it. And I think it's really important. I think if we can have more people who are those champions, more stewards for that stuff, and we can step away from kind of transactional interactions with nature and really engage with nature in a meaningful way and recognize that if we don't have personal responsibility for taking care of this, and as you said, it can go away and it can disappear.
Yeah. And obviously we love that idea of adventuring with purpose, whether that's a personal one or something that we're trying to then, expand the concentric circle to affect more people. So yeah, it's great that you do that. You talked about there are some challenges. There's physical ones, there's maybe some emotional ones. Maybe a particular physical challenge was a grizzly encounter that you guys had on trail.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time not just here in Colorado, but outdoors and encountering wildlife. Those are always the types of experiences that you hope you can have from a distance. And, preparing for this trip, I recognized we were going into grizzly country. We were going to be in places where there were active grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are obviously preparing, to sleep for the winter. And we recognize that they're fattening up at this time of year, so they are very much out and about, very active at all times of the day. But having said that, I didn't think we were going to, encounter a grizzly bear. I figured the chances are really small, like 1% to 2% chance. In fact, having talked to a lot of Canadians, they were like, oh yeah, I've been in that area for years, hiked, never seen a grizzly bear. So you prepare for those moments, but nothing can really fully prepare you for the moment. Right. So we were hiking along a road, and we knew that this was a very active grizzly bear area. There were lots of signs warning that lots of bear scat, poop on the trail. Lots of signs saying, beware, grizzlies in this area. Grizzlies are very active. And it was about 5:30 in the afternoon. We had been hiking all day. We were tired. My friend and I weren't talking. You know, one of the things you're supposed to do is make noise so the grizzly hears you. Of course, we weren't doing that. And it was raining. And so it was one of the few times on the trip that we were actually getting rain. It was a soft rain.
They're not even hearing your footfalls then. It's just rain noise. Yeah.
I was on the left-hand side of the road, and I did not see this bear. Clearly, I was tired, not paying attention, and she was eating berries right on the side of the road. We scared each other. She stood up to her full height and put her arms up. She didn't make any noise or anything. And I immediately stepped back, quite startled, of course.
Sure.
And I took out the bear spray. I wasn't going to spray her unless she showed signs of aggression. And then we started saying, hey, bear, the typical thing you see people do. And she put her paws down and started to walk away from us and then stood back up, which is actually not the best of signs. And at that point in time, I wanted to just get past this bear. I wanted to be away from her. I didn't want anything to do with her. But my friend did stop and take a video and some pictures of her. He was braver than I am. But she, all in all, it was a female grizzly, probably about 300 plus pounds, and she was not overtly aggressive. But what I will say is, when we were hiking back out through this area, because we did an in and out trip in this location, they closed the whole area because of grizzly activity. No kidding. So I don't know if it was the same bear or multiple bears, but they said this area's closed because the grizzlies in this area are acting in particular curious. So they're approaching people, getting closer than they should be, and you're supposed to maintain 100 meters from a bear, and we were probably 6 feet from her.
Yeah, sometimes you just, like you said, you kind of jump scare each other, like, oh, well, there they are.
Yeah.
And it always surprises me just how quiet wildlife is. You can see almost 1,000-pound moose or something,
Yes.
and it can sneak right behind you almost. So, yeah, similar with bears, too. Well, we're glad that you made it out of that to tell us about it today.
Me too.
So, at the end of the trip, is there one experience, whether it lives in your head or, a picture, that just, this was the moment. It sums up the entire trip. This moment was so worth the miles, the bear encounter, the everything.
Yeah, I would say it was on the last morning of the trip. We had a lot of incredible moments, so I have incredible memories throughout. But on the last morning of the trip, we had hiked out to Assiniboine Peak, and there's an overlook that almost everybody shoots, and it's a sunrise overlook. And we were pretty tired by this last morning, and we had the option. We had a 16-mile hike out. We had the option of adding an additional 4 miles to go up to this overlook, or to stay down at the lake. And we hemmed and hawed about it the night before. We were like, do we want to do this? 20 miles in a day at the end of this long trip. We're exhausted. Like, maybe it's not the best idea. My friend's knee was hurting him. So we made the game time call to not hike up to the overlook and to stay down at the lake. And we thought, that might end up being a mistake. It tends to be fairly windy, and so we didn't know, like, what is this going to really turn into. We were having a hard time finding a composition, looking for good trees in the dark and struggling a little bit. And I said to my friend, hey, why don't we go down to the lake's edge? It looks like the lake could be calm enough to get a reflection of the peak. And we went down to the lake edge, and sure enough, the lake was like glass. Oh, and it was one of the best sunrises I've seen in my life, with these incredible cotton candy pink clouds and a reflection. And I think of Assiniboine Peak, it's not a photo that I've ever seen before, and it is it's just, that's what you do it for. Yeah. Those are those moments. I'm sure it would have been incredible at the overlook, but I'm not sure we would have made it, to be honest with you.
I was going to say that 20 miles, that's at the end of a trip, no less,
Yes,
too. You're
exactly.
tired, so.
Yeah, the end of a 100-mile trip, it would have been too much. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why we get out there and
Yep.
do it, man.
Yep.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the gear that you brought with you.
Sure.
I, as a fellow photographer, would be remiss. Give us the quick, what did you bring from a photography standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it was a real struggle in terms of figuring out what to bring. We talked a little bit about the fact that I am an astrophotographer, but this was not an astrophotography focused trip. So I almost always want to bring prime lenses because they're faster, open to wider apertures. But I made the decision to bring a 16-35 f2.8 lens. It's a do-everything type of lens.
Good enough for some incidental astro, if in case, too. Yeah.
Yep. And you can capture, tighter landscape scenes with it, wider scenes with it, get some foreground. So it has a lot of versatility. And I originally planned on just bringing that one lens. And the fly has found us. And then I ended up also deciding to bring a 55 millimeter lens. And I brought the 55 largely because then you can kind of punch in, you can get some compression on some images, you can get kind of scale shots with people in them in ways that you can't do with the 35. So those were the only two lenses I brought. And I brought a small travel tripod, a Really Right Stuff, a Sen 14, which is literally only about this big. And that was it for photography stuff. So very, very minimal. And then, of course, I had to bring all of my other gear with me for cooking and sleeping and all of that stuff.
All the other backpacking stuff.
That's right.
I always get jealous of people who are like through hikers and they're in, I'm here to just do miles.
Yes.
Because they'll talk about their base weight and it's so light, and as photographers, like a light kit is like an extra 10 pounds, and that's like you said, you're bringing two lenses and let's talk about some of your other gear. You had the opportunity to get some Tellus gear, put some miles on it, and as we've talked about, you're kind of viewing your adventure through different lenses. You're a conservation scientist, someone who's out there photographing nature and understands the conservation angle of that. But at the end of the day, you just need stuff that works too, right?
Right.
So was there anything that stood out to you about the Tellus gear from the conservation standpoint, from the ruggedness standpoint? How did it hold up on the trip?
Yeah. I mean, it held up amazingly well. I am always trying to, I think a lot of outdoor folks are gear junkies in many ways. So we all have more gear than we would ever possibly need.
I don't.
But, okay.
I don't, yeah.
But we're always looking.
If my wife is listening, I don't.
But we're always looking for, that next best thing. Something that's slightly lighter, or something that has really good waterproofing fabric. Like nobody wants to be wet. Right. Those types of things. So, straight out of the box, I was super impressed with the waterproofing that the pants have, and I pretty much wore one pair of pants the whole trip, and not having to worry about being wet is huge when you only have one pair of pants and you don't have another pair to change into. So that's huge. Little things like the pull tabs on the zippers and not having to grab the cold zipper with your cold hands, type of stuff. I did end up wearing the shell a ton. And again, when you're out layering, I mean, as anyone who's spent time in the outdoors knows, it's all about the layering of your clothes and having those right layers. Even though you maybe don't have really heavy stuff, you can stay warm by having the right layers of clothing. And so being able to kind of use some of the Tellus gear in a layered fashion was really, really clutch for me, because again, I only brought one set of clothes, right, and I didn't have a lot of flexibility. I mean, I will say what kind of drew me to Tellus, I love local stuff, and so I love to support local brands, and was really excited when I drive down Riverside every day, and so I'd seen the Tellus sign, but hadn't had an opportunity, and was able to come into your store and see some of the stuff that you guys had to offer, and saw how high quality it was. But then also immediately noticed kind of the vision of TELUS. And my mom, ironically, is a Latin teacher.
Okay.
And so we very quickly figured out that TELUS means earth in Latin. And of course, that excited her, and it excited me as somebody who's taken Latin. But then also, it has that, meaning to it. It's not, it's a brand that has meaning, that has purpose in many ways. And so I love to support that type of thing. And then very, very importantly, I think we talked a lot about conservation and the value of conservation and how do we support that as a society. And of course, TELUS as a brand has this 100% give back model where they are reinvesting profits from the business into conservation and into protection. And I think that speaks volumes to me as a conservationist. You hit the nail on the head for me and my values as a person. And I think probably for a lot of outdoor folks, that carries an extra weight and an extra value that other brands maybe don't have. So.
Yeah, and we know a lot of people who are passionate about the outdoors. We share these values of wanting to protect the things that we love. We like to say that, with TELUS gear, you can also like wear these values now too, right? So
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, man.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who they love the outdoors and they're looking for a way to make a difference, even just locally?
Yep.
What do you think they could do?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things we can do in our day-to-day lives and the decisions that we make that I think can have a positive impact. I mean, obviously, it's a hard question for me because I've devoted my whole life to this and contributing to meaningful conservation. And I didn't go into it because it was going to be, super financially lucrative or any of that stuff. I did it because it's what I believe in and it's what I'm passionate about. But I think we're at a time, in many ways, we're kind of at a crossroads where I do think some of these core wild places are at risk. And I think even just using our voices is a powerful thing. Maybe we don't have the financial means to make substantial contributions to conservation types of organizations. But if we can make our elected officials aware of how important this is to us, then that carries a lot of weight. And I think, we put these people in power, and we have the opportunity to have our voices reflected through them and have them speak up for the things that we care about. And I think in Colorado, the vast majority of people who live here because of access to the outdoors, because they can go hiking and mountain biking and fly fishing and skiing, and they can take advantage of all of these different things. But if we don't protect those things, we don't use our voice or our pocketbook to support that type of, the conservation of those places, they will disappear. And unfortunately, like I said, we are at a time where there's a crossroads, and a lot of that stuff is at risk. And it's a very tough time for conservation. So.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about kind of like whatever your resources are, be them financial or your voice or your time, using that.
Yes.
To benefit conservation, and whether it's at a local level, global level. So yeah, that's nice. We can all do a little bit of a part there.
Yep.
So one last question: what's
Sure.
next for you? Another adventure? Are you back to the science grind now, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't sit around for long. I don't have anything like immediately planned in terms of a trip, but there's kind of two opportunities that I'm always paying attention to. So we happen to be in a very active solar cycle. And so you may or may not know, but we've had a lot of mid-latitude aurora. And so I'm always keeping an eye out for that. And I will drop anything. I will drop everything and rush out to shoot the aurora. So there is always that opportunity. About a year ago, I had been in the San Juans, and I came back, and there was a huge solar storm. And I said to my wife, and I actually had COVID at the time. I said to my wife, I'm going out to shoot the aurora. And she's like, what do you mean you're going out to shoot? You're sick as a dog. Like, you can't go out to shoot the aurora. Well, I hiked up to Sky Pond, which up in Rocky, which is
with COVID?
Yeah, which is one of the toughest hikes there is. I did it in an hour and 45 minutes. I basically ran up to Sky Pond, and I shot the aurora over Sky Pond, and it's one of my favorite photos that I've ever taken. So that was last October. Right around now, we, in the next week or two, have some opportunities maybe to get some mid-latitude aurora. And then, of course, like, I love the winter night sky. It's not for the faint of heart to go out in the dead of winter in the mountains and freeze to death. I'll go out quite a few times this winter and try to capture some night sky and enjoy that. But no big trips planned, unfortunately.
I will be expecting a call for either of those. Okay. And the next time we talk, I will tell you the story of how I got frostbite on my shooting finger on my camera, and I put my finger in a sous vide cooker to bring it back.
Wow!
I know,
and it worked.
Your finger is there. Here it is.
He's got proof. He's got proof, folks.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks so much for taking the time talking with us, Brandt. It's been awesome talking with you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
All right. And everyone, tune in next time for the next episode of the Adventure with Purpose podcast. Till next time. For anyone who wants to know a little bit more about Brandt, read some more details about his awesome trip, and also see some of those images, Brandt was kind enough to write a blog for us that'll be on the TELUS website, and we'll leave a link to it down below. So go check it out. Thanks again.